Well, welcome back to the ROKK Rundown. I'm excited to have two new guests today for this conversation. I've got two of the most recent veterans from Capitol Hill, Mary Werden and Annie Clark, and they're joining me today to talk about what's happening now that the shutdown is over. So, all right, Mary, this is really it's fresh news. It's just done. What are your takeaways from the shutdown now that the government's back open?
Well, so the big news for everyone watching is that the National Arboretum will reopen on Saturday. So for those of you who live in Northeastern Washington, D.C., who have missed your favorite green space, I will see you there this weekend.
Fantastic.
But on the political front, if you're following Capitol Hill, as we have been for the last, 50 days or so, on the Democratic side, I think you've seen us sort of find our mojo back, for lack of a better word, right? Healthcare is clearly top of mind for voters, for constituents. And we saw what happened last Tuesday with major wins up and down the ballot in races all over the country.
Annie, what about you?
Shutdowns are always terrible. Nobody ever really wins. But I think I was very encouraged to see 3 full-year funding packages attached to the bill. That is a huge win for the Appropriations Committee, and I think it's a huge win for Congress. Operating in these year-long CRs, lock in the previous year's priorities, they waste a ton of money, they make no sense. So to have 3 full-year bills that fully fund WIC, SNAP, our veterans programs is a very significant step, and what I hope that means is we're going to see more movement on additional full-year bills and get out of this CR to CR inefficiency that I think is horrible for our government.
So great. Spoken like a true appropriator communicator, right?
If you didn't know Annie worked for Susan Collins, you do now.
Now you do. So what, all right, so, but I mean, everybody's probably just relieved that this is over, but there's a lot of work to get done.
Mm-hmm.
What's next? What comes next?
Well, we're hoping to see a movement towards these funding bills. So hopefully there'll be what they call a minibus package. There's 12 bills. Congress hasn't passed all 12 bills by the deadline since 1996, so we're never going to get that. But to move to get some full year funding for our transportation, for our air traffic controllers, for the military, for the healthcare system, so many things. So hopefully we'll see movement towards that sort of package. And then we're going to have to do something by the new deadline of the CR, which is January 30th. So we'll see how that nets out, if they're able to take more bills off the table so the CR is smaller, how that operates, and hopefully avert a government shutdown part 2, which nobody wants to see.
Mary, what do you think from the House point of view? What are you watching for?
I think you're seeing a lot of the policy debates that existed before the shutdown come back to the forefront, right? You've got the permitting process, which has been a big priority on the Republican side and for some Democrats as well. Just this morning, I saw an article that said the chair of Natural Resources wanted to bring a bill not only to the floor, but also get it up for a vote by the end of the year, which would be a major win for them if they can accomplish it. Obviously, we've already talked about healthcare. We've got a lot of really interesting debates, too, in the financial services industry. Crypto has been front and center for not only the administration, but also for Republicans in Congress. A lot of what they're asking for right now is putting them up against some the traditional banking industry. And so you're seeing a lot of back and forth between two groups that sit in the same industry, but also are kind of at odds over various issues that would affect their business. So I think you're going to see that return as well.
One of the things that we talked about collectively, and especially about ROKK clients, is that regardless of the shutdown, no messaging stopped. People were still communicating, messages were landing. So the one takeaway I have as it relates to what we just saw, whether it's the off-season elections, the shutdown, or midterms, regardless of what we are seeing, messaging is going to continue to happen and happen in a way that maybe we haven't seen before. You've said that this was a shutdown that was unlike any you'd seen before. I know I've heard you say the same. So that alone, I think, is a message not just to all of us as advisors to clients, but clients as they're looking to what their plan should be for 26, is that they need to stay the course. Because we are working in a time when those government movements no longer affect how messaging is changing. So that was one of the things that I saw as a possible counsel to all of us as we work as communicators.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that even though members are not in Washington, their work is still continuing when they're in their districts and at home, right? So they're still reading their local papers, they're still interacting with constituents. And that's a really important way and avenue that you can get to policymakers if that's your goal. And so I think there's a tendency to look at Washington and think like, oh, there's no legislation moving, so nothing's happening. There's always the local angle you can use.
I think that's very true. And at the same time, we had the House of Representatives out for more than 50 days. So that was dearth of hearings, bill introductions. There was, a void in some ways as these larger conversations are happening, with the administration and nationwide. There was also sort of a hole in some ways for what was happening in Congress. And now you see kind of a movement, I think, to set an agenda. There's been so much that's been, that's had to happen so far this year. So we'll see how that shakes out and what opportunities that creates for our clients is to get in there and drive something and lead the conversation and the members as well.
Great point. Last question. Does the shutdown happen again in January?
I say no.
I also say no, but I said no last time too. So
I said yes last time.
You did say Annie was right, but I was the insurance policy.
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
had to be, contrarian just in case.
Right. Well, House, Senate, we gotta,
Well, we'll see what happens. And if not, I owe you both $1 because I'm going to say maybe yes. So that's it for today's ROKK Rundown. So if it's happening here in Washington, D.C., happening in this town, it's happening on the ROKK Rundown.